What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another panel show for you guys. On today's power panel, we have some brilliant guests. We got Brains McLeod, big up to you. He's been a regular guest on the panel show. Ashmatic, you're all used to his face, but a new guest on the panel show today. We have Sai. He's got a pen and paper ready to take notes, ready to hold people to account. Big up to you, Sai. How we doing?
I have a pen, but no paper.
No paper. Where are you writing? So where are you writing your notes? Just
This is
anywhere.
all about
On your
perception of
hand.
intelligence,
Writing on your
mate.
hand, just so you remember things. Just like Brain said
Perception
this,
of
and you bring it up.
intelligence. Every 10 seconds, if I dip my head down, it looks like I'm doing something.
Big up. Just guys, just make sure you'll know what you're saying, because Sai is going to be writing it down. He's going to be holding you to account.
And Sai's accountant's going to come on soon and show all those receipts.
Yeah. Exactly. Is the audio? Let me know in the comments, guys. The audio, right? I'm seeing some comments saying that the audio is messed up. Hopefully, it's fine. I'm hearing it fine. Are you guys hearing everything all right on the panel? All right, you're all sounding good. All right. So on today's panel, we're going to go through a few things. We're going to talk about some of the. Oh, well, I do keep hearing something. We're going to go through some of the managerial potential. What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here. Sorry about all the technical difficulties we have just been experiencing. The internet. Sorry, I've had like a bunch of like talking points. I was like being ready for the stream, and this internet has been screwing us for about 45 minutes. I'm all like, oh man, I'm just so down now. I've been levied. I've been enicked. I've been enicked in this stream. As you've noticed, Sai has subbed out. Sean has come in, so Sean is now going to be the one taking the receipts. Sai has unfortunately run out of time, which is a big shame. But thank you, Sean, for stepping in. Big up to you. Right, let's just get straight into it. So I was going to go through all the topics, but we'll start first with we're talking about the article from The Athletic today, talking about basically what happened between Spurs, Antonio Conte and the players, and why we're in the situation that we are in. And the main, one of the first points I want to talk about is the players, because one of the interesting things that was pointed out in the article was when Conte first came in, the Spurs players were so desperate for a kind of structure to play in and a kind of way moving forward. And under Nuno, they didn't feel like they had that. They didn't feel like they're going in a direction. And then Conte comes in, and he had like great training methods, and they really bought into the structure he was giving to them and building. And then it says in the article, but the Spurs players felt like they could only play that for so long. They couldn't play that kind of way forever. And then the following season, they felt like they wanted to play more freedom. Then they felt like the structure all of a sudden became rigid, and they got bored of the training sessions. But the thing is, they said these things under Pochettino and under Mourinho. Well, I guess you can say it's different players, but a lot of the same things were said.
Don't run over that fact, though. That is a key fact.
Which fact? Players. There is different players. I want to play a audio clip from the Athletic podcast as a reference point that we can discuss before we get into it. But I want to know if you can hear this. One sec. Let me know if you can hear this.
I just find the whole this idea that Conte was pushing forward, and many agreed with, and fair play, that the players are to blame. I accept that they should take a portion of the blame, but I also find the idea that there's some sort of fundamental flaw that all Tottenham players have that makes them unmanageable. I just find that really far-fetched. Like most players of that level, you have to be extraordinarily talented and motivated and determined to make it. So this idea that there isn't a manager out there who can get a tune out of them, I just find ridiculous. And also, they've had three managers since Pochettino. Bear in mind, Pochettino, they did perform incredibly well, and they actually punched massively above their weight for about 5 years. The idea that, we've had Mourinho, Nuno, and Conte, what else can we do? If they don't perform under those managers, there's no manager out there. As if those three cover like the whole spectrum of football management.
Right. So I guess the question is, that those are all fair points, but as well, there does seem to be a culture around Tottenham over the past few years of players kind of originally buying into something and then all of a sudden feeling like they're tired of these tactics, and it's happened a few times. Like, why did they tire quicker than maybe like the Chelsea players or the Inter Milan players or Juventus players? Why did that happen? So I guess the question is, how responsible are the players for the current situation that we're in? I guess we'll start with you, Brains. How much responsibility do you put on the players for how things have turned out and why they've maybe they haven't had that motivation, or does Conte take the majority of the blame for you?
Yeah, I don't put like. Here's the thing: as a player, like. I don't put the blame on the players, and I think trying to put blame on players is such a weak argument. If you're saying like that whole thing of like, oh, they threw this manager on the bus, they threw that man, it's like, who? It's different players. Are we saying Dyer and Davies? Dyer loves Conte. Davies had a great time under Conte. Like who is it then? Is it Tanganga and Sanchez? Like, well, they're French players. They don't really matter. So then really you're talking about Son, Kane, Hobby, Bentancur. Now, if he can't win over world-class players, then he's a bad manager. Those players have played under great managers. The thing with like not evolving your training, think about footballers. Think about this. It's their job. They go there every day, like the same as we all do jobs. That is their day job. You can't expect them to play rigid drills for like forever. Players want to evolve. Every single player, it's their job, not just for their club, but for them to want to get better. Their job is to evolve. They need the coaching to get better and better and step up. They need to see things happening. They need to see it happen in a game. If a strategy in training is easy to assassinate in training, but it's impossible in a game, it breaks down in a player's mind, so they will not believe in it. And if it happens over and over and over, it will start to... Teams, if you think about a team, there will be different fragments, but it's like once an idea doesn't work, it becomes a poison. It goes through all the different players and they will stop playing that system. It's not that they're downing tools. It's not that they're being... Some part of it will be subconscious. They will just go, this doesn't work. Why are we doing this? And so that's the problem with Conte. He will go, I'm Conte, motherfucker. You know, it's like that doesn't matter to players.
And there goes the demonetization within the first 6 minutes of the video.
Don't worry, because thanks to the lag, Sean, this stream has been going for 45 minutes, so don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that.
So I don't really believe that. I think it's a team has to be together with manager and with coach. Like, I don't believe that you can say that, like, a manager has to come in and he has to inspire the dressing room. He has to win over each individual player. We have, and at Spurs, this whole thing that they're kind of insinuating through that, what we were just talking about there, is that Spurs, there's no care for player welfare, like mental welfare. So, like, if you look at the Amazon All or Nothing that Spurs did, and then you look at the one that Arsenal did, there's that guy in the Arsenal club who pulls people aside and he's like, how's it going? How are you doing? Like, they sit down, they watch some footage, they go, what do you think you could have done better there? And he's like a lovely brother guy, because Arteta's not that guy, right? Arteta will put his arm around you, but he has people to facilitate the side of his personality he doesn't have. Conte doesn't have anyone that's going to go, you know, it's like, Ryan, go down and fucking toss him off for a sec. Like, he doesn't have that, right? So you need
In fairness, in the article, it does say that Gianni Ventroni was one of the people who used to do that.
He's
and
gone.
Obviously,
He's gone.
Yeah.
We got to get someone else in there mad quick. Can you imagine? But even that, can you imagine someone sitting down with Eric Dyer? You know, and like, Eric, look at this header. See how you've headed the ball straight into the path of most. Can you see how you see these mistakes you're making? What could you do better, Eric? Can you see it? Can you see it? Look at the screen, Eric. What could you do better, Eric? Sometimes we have to admit that, sometimes we just have players who are not good enough. And so it's a multitude of things. You have players who are best friends with other players. I guarantee you, Harry Kane does not want Eric Dyer to go. He's one of his best friends. But Harry Kane knows he is not a good enough defender to be on the field with me. So then you have these weird situations where players want players to stay, but they know their team isn't good enough. So you see how it's like all so messed up. You have to change it all. You have to have a manager who's willing to change everything from the bottom up.
Let's bring Ash Matic in here. Ash, obviously Brains does have some good points when it comes to if the players aren't kind of motivated to play for you. That's obviously ultimately the manager's responsibility. But how do you square when the squad that we have who haven't won anything basically have the opinion of a multi-title winning manager that his training methods are too rigid or there's a problem with them when the players are the ones who haven't won anything?
I think it's a mixture of both. I don't think it's one answer fits all. Me personally, I think the first time they came in, they were craving for structure because they didn't have a leadership in Nuno, which they respected and they thought or believed that they can get to the next level. After playing after Jose Mourinho, Nuno was obviously a student of Mourinho. So basically, you're getting a downgrade. And I felt that's why you have players like Kane pushing for a massive move to Man City. We fast forward now into Conte, and now you've got someone who's more of a disciplinarian, and now it's more like a taskmaster you've got at the ground. And sometimes, as a player, you just kind of need that freedom, especially attacking players like your Sons, your Kulus. You sometimes need that kind of freedom to express yourself. And when you're not happy as well, you sometimes don't play with that freedom on the pitch. You can't express yourself in the same way. So, but at the same time, with Conte, I feel like the reason why the top managers are top and they are elite is because they've proven their work and their method and their mettle in their approach and their ways into the game. So his blueprint, he's taken that over to Juventus. He did well. He went over to Inter Milan. It worked. It went well. He went to Chelsea. It worked. It went well. And the only reason why it didn't work at some of these clubs was because of external factors, i.e., or e.g., your board members getting involved, wanting to sell off the best players, etc., etc. With Tottenham, he got top 4. Ultimately, it was working. So when you look at that sense, you're saying, well, we've got an elite manager, the players are craving structure, and now they've got it. It's like, who's right, who's wrong? The way I see it, for me, a weakness of Conte was maybe profiling players, because some players, he wants big players, he wants tall players, he wants physical players, fast players, and he wants that all across the pitch. But when you profile a player, some players are better at dribbling and are naturally suited to that game. Some players are better on possession and they're more suited to that game. Some players love defending. Some players are more aggressive. So sometimes when you look at someone like Erik ten Hag, he's got Sancho. Now, Sancho was a winger. He's looked at Sancho and he said, you know what? I'm going to play you in the middle of the park. I'm going to play you as a 10 and I'm going to mix your game up because I know you like dribbling. I'm going to make you carry the ball and I'm going to make you switch with Bruno. So Bruno will sometimes be the 10 and then sometimes Sancho will be the 10 and they will swap on the right-hand side and will confuse teams. But where Conte tactically, and you've seen it, Sim, me and you've watched games together, and he hasn't changed things when things need to be changed. He's too rigid where you've got the 2 workhorses in the middle, the 2 workhorses and the 2 DM, I call them defensive midfielders. I don't call them double pivots because they don't push high up enough when we have the ball to create overloads like you see like Arsenal where we've got Martin Odegaard and Xhaka. They often swap over and sometimes it's like a 2-3-5 with Arsenal, or Man City, they attack with a 5 and they switch things up. I know I'm not saying Spurs should do that. I'm just saying when it comes to tactical flexibility and players having certain roles, or you're saying, you know what, Emerson, I don't think you're a wing back. I think I'm going to change your position slightly. And I think maybe I'm going to bring another player in that position and I'm going to move and I'm going to develop Emerson in a different way. I although we have seen Emerson played in the inverted fullback or wingback position, I just feel like sometimes he has a plan, he sticks with it, and he goes with that plan throughout the entire 90 minutes, where there's times to kind of switch it depending on your opponent and depending on who you're playing and who you're facing. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think with Conte, because he hasn't been able to he's been a little bit rigid. He's kind of lost some of the younger players because when you're young, you're like a sponge. You're constantly picking up new things. You want to learn new things. You want to try new tactics, new formations, especially when things aren't going your way. Especially in-game matches and scenarios when Southampton have pushed all their players on top, and you haven't got a player that's risk averse in a Højbjerg, and he's not wanting to do that difficult pass to kind of get us out of that difficult position. He ends up passing it and it comes back over onto us, and we haven't got players that have enough energy to kind of help that back 4, back 5 out, because sometimes the back 5 need to be protected and the front 4 aren't doing enough. They're too close, because when we were playing Southampton, there was 7 players in the box. Why? They're meant to have their shape. We're losing our shape. Who's the player on the pitch that needs to be able to sort that out? And is that being addressed during the week, during training sessions by Conte? So it's these small man-to-man things, it's these tactical things as well that I'm looking at Conte and thinking you're meant to be developing them, not just tactically, but man-to-man, putting an arm around the shoulder. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised to hear that, because I didn't mind him calling the players out, but I thought he called the players out inside the dressing room. So I thought he went to just had a word with them and then came out and said his piece, but he didn't. And that, for me, that was like borderline. Where does the level of professionalism come into it? because I'm trying to back you,
It was
Conte. I
tactical
am.
manipulation, mate, to get himself a contract contract payout.
Yeah, it's probably it's looking more likely, considering especially that the fact that there's a dispute right now. There seems to be a dispute about him being sacked or him resigning, all that kind of stuff.
Has he turned up today? Has he turned up yesterday?
Apparently he's not coming back. Apparently he's not going to come back. I want to bring in Sean though on this topic. Sean, I want to ask you about. In the article, it details how a lot of the players felt like the training was so like always the same. There wasn't many changes, and they were getting kind of tired and bored of it. And even some of the players would say that they were looking forward to international duty just so they can try something different. But if the players feel that way, at what point is it on their part unprofessional to kind of not be motivated by the tactics of a multi-title winning manager? Or is it on the manager to kind of mix it up in training and make sure he's keeping the players motivated on the tactics part? Where do you stand on that? Because it's so, like, is it not unprofessional? Does it not also go to a poor mentality from the players if they're unhappy with his training methods?
Yeah, 100%, Sim. I think in anything in life, it's never one nor the other. Anyone that comes with a binary approach to an opinion is probably like coming with a confirmation bias. It's always a subtle shade of grey. For me, there's two different sides to the conversation, right? One is, are the players good enough on the pitch to be able to implement the tactics and execute them effectively? And you could make the argument that half of the team probably aren't, right? To be able to go on and achieve things that can satiate the players and the manager and the fans, where maybe you'll tolerate boredom for success. But the part where he's really coming at it from, and this is the part where, like, to your question specifically, do the players have the professionalism to tolerate the boredom in the training, to stay focused on the pitch, to have that winning mentality? It's the psychological aspect of the game. I was reading up on Julian Nagelsmann earlier and last night, and he made a quote a while back. I think when he was at Hoffenheim or when he was at Leipzig, and he said, "For me as a manager, I'm 70% tactics, 30% psychology." And he went on into like the realms, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. He basically said, I have very nuanced and unique relationships with every single player that I manage, because every single person is individual. Some people prefer the stick, some people prefer the carrot, and there's always a combo of both that's necessary. And outsourcing that stuff to psychologists kind of dilutes your ability to really have a relationship with the player. And so one of the things that he takes very seriously is trying to establish the way to impact the psychology of an individual. And when you're playing in a football team, you're not just trying to, it's not like a golfer who has, a psychologist, because it's just down to him. It's just down to how he impacts, every strike of the ball and focuses. But when you've got a football team, you've got 11 players on the pitch, you've got 8 or whatever it is on the bench, and you've got 5 or 6 that aren't even included. And they all have to integrate and interact all day long, every day. And like Brains was saying, the influence of one little niggle, one person that's popular in the dressing room that's unhappy with his treatment, all that kind of thing can infect the overall satisfaction, the overall drive, and the willingness to play and perform for a manager. So it's a very difficult bunch of plates that are constantly being spun, and the manager needs to take a charge of that. And when it comes to Conte, I don't think any of us are really too clued up. First of all, I think I said it last time I was on your show, Sim. As content creators, as much as we all might have opinions, none of us, as far as I'm aware, are doctors or psychologists or psychiatrists that can understand the intricacies of how people's brains work. Neither are the people that, Conte. He might be a brilliant tactician, a brilliant, football guy, but is he a brilliant guy who understands the minds of individuals? Maybe, maybe not. One thing we can look at is Emerson Royale came out with a statement in the last week saying, like, his opinion's his opinion, but for what it's worth, none of us had very cozy relationships with Conte. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but he said it was not a very close relationship. It was kind of standoffish. There wasn't too many interactions. And so that to me is an issue. If you're getting paid a lot of money, like Conte is, to do a job, and all you're really ever doing is delivering the same tactics, obviously, like you said, to the point in the article, if the training is very repetitive, because he doesn't want to pivot from a 3-4-3 to a back 4, a 4-2-3-1, if there's no natural desire to practice different situations, different solutions for different situations, and you're repeating the same old thing over and over again, yeah, the players will get bored. And keeping players mentally, occupied, mentally inspired is definitely going to be part of the job. And then on the pitch, if you're doing exactly the same thing, if you don't have any tactical fluency or dynamism, if you're thinking that the same square peg should be suitable for every hole, regardless of the shape, whether it's circle or triangle or whatever else, then again, I think you're going to have problems keeping the players motivated, unless you have a specific set of players that naturally have their own strength of willpower, strength of mind, and Tottenham clearly don't have that. So, in summary, whose fault is it for the players to be to not be playing for him, or to have not suggesting down tools? I think it would be easier for Conte to play with a bunch of with players that are first and foremost just technically better, and therefore the fact that you're getting 3 points every game or most of the time, that in itself is some sort of motivation to keep going. But when things go rough and you're not getting the results, you're not getting the juice from the squeeze, then you probably need a manager who has a better skill set than Conte has to be able to continue to find ways to motivate the players when times are not going so strong. And I don't think Conte has that much experience working with teams that are not as good as the team, not good enough to always be near the top of the table. And I think with Tottenham, it's his toughest task, because we are nowhere near good enough to win the league. And I think his deficiencies as a manager is clear when it comes to the motivational and the psychological side of the game.
Yeah,
just picking up on that point. It's like, see if you run a big company, and you have your office where all your kind of like your office workers work in. If you look at like just like an accountancy firm, a local accountancy firm, like they're just like people just working away. And our call center, boring office jobs, like boring call center jobs. Like they always have to get new. You always have to hire. So you're spending fees on agencies to get people to come in and work for your crappy company, because the people who run those crappy companies don't care about their employees. So there's a constant turnover of new employee, and none of the employees care about the job. It's like, sit here, read a script, sell insurance. That's a dreadful life. Who wants that job? Nobody wants that job. That job doesn't even have to get done anymore. Go and look how Google treat their employees. Like, other than the over the score woke stuff, and they fire people left, right, and center for saying anything. But like, as in, you walk in, it's light colors. There's games to play. You don't have to have a set work time. You can go in, you can sit, you can do your work anywhere. You can go to a cafe and work. It's like they treat people. They understand that your employee has to be treated a certain way. Now think about footballers. Not only do they have to get their bodies in extremely good shape to play like high pressure football with 60,000 people watching them, we can't even begin to perceive the pressure that is on these humans. And we think, but they get paid 50 million. That's even worse. That's even more pressure for them. Someone like Richarlison, this is why the initial thing I didn't want Richarlison to come in, because I know he's a young guy. He's a Brazilian. He's very fiery. He's full of blood and guts. And you want someone like that. You want to take him in. You want to be like, you're my guy. You are my guy. You will play every week. If you play well, you will play every week. You need, and so as soon as he doesn't get that treatment, and he's getting paid 50 million, so his brain goes, I'm starting for Brazil. I'm getting paid 50 million. His head is going like, I am the god. And then yet he's got Conte going, fuck out of here. Like, get out of here. You won't do this for me in training. You won't do that. You can see that will break his soul. And that's what happened.
But from a fan perspective, when you see Antonio Conte goes into the job at Juventus and Chelsea and Inter Milan, and all the players in those squads are very receptive to his ideas, and a lot of the time they're fully on board, their players, with what he's trying to do, and by and large, the Inter Milan players absolutely loved Conte, and they wanted him to stay after his 2 years. Chelsea obviously won the league. Juventus, he won multiple titles. Even Italy, he was well fond of, and they were very receptive to his ideas. And then you hear at Tottenham that our players all of a sudden are not as receptive to the ideas that Conte has and his repetitiveness in training. How do us fans square that with the portioning, who's to blame as to why this relationship hasn't worked out? Is it just because his ideas are outdated? Is it because the players, our players, have a specific mentality issue? It's just very frustrating as a Tottenham fan when we've brought in a manager who's won lots of trophies and all like his ideas and training methods are very highly thought of when he goes to other clubs. Yet when he comes here, like our players, like, oh, these are boring. We don't want to play these tactics. It's like, well, who are you to say that?
But Sam, can you imagine being him? Just imagine you're Conte and you're winning, right? And you go into Inter Milan, you got Barella, and that fits what you love because you love a regista, right? You love a player who's going to carry the ball.
By the way, Inter Milan hadn't won a league title for 19 years when he went there. Like he won their first title in a long time.
But they were always like they always had a squad that was competitive with the very top teams in Italy.
And they were building up
potentially, but they dropped. Yeah, they had dropped. I mean, maybe not when Conte went there, but there were a few years they had dropped into mid-table, and there were definitely a few. They were in Europa League for many years.
But Sam, it's just about what that team might have needed. They might have needed a pragmatist to come in, pull things together, and use it. So when I look at that Inter Milan squad, I see Conte played to the strengths of that squad for what they need, for what they had and what they needed. He goes to another, like Chelsea as well. A great squad of players, a really great squad, really good talent all the way through that team. Comes to Spurs, and now he's got all that. Like winning is sometimes is baggage, because your brain goes, that shit works for me. So if someone's not going to do that stuff, then they're losers. They're scum. They're not going to do. So I could see his brain going like, no, you're going to do my stuff. And rather than coming into Spurs, not understanding the weight that is on every single player who pulls on a Spurs shirt, knowing that 60,000 people every single week are expecting some magic thing where it's always going to get better.
Gavin, the accusation that was always thrown at Conte from some elements, right, was that he came in and wanted everybody, from Daniel Levy, Paratici, to the 25 members of the squad, or the 15 players that have come, or 12 players that have come in and gone out, whatever. Since then, everyone has to adapt to his winning methodology, right? Which is fine, right? But there's no one way to win. And if you are that good, then part of what makes up, I believe, at least in my opinion, the title of being elite is that you have a plan B, or you have an element of adaptability. And if I think it would have been far easier if he is that good. It would have been far easier for him to adapt to make the best of the squad rather than asking 25 individuals to adapt all of their games to pivot to his system, because there'll be 3 or 4 players that go, okay, I'm capable, I'm competent, I can adapt, I can pivot. But there'll be 5 or 6 that just aren't competent enough. And unless you have a whole team singing from the same hymn sheet, then you're never going to be able to make that step. So really, like the path of least resistance for Tottenham to have got the best out of Conte was for Conte to adapt.
But isn't it frustrating when Conte first comes in? Obviously, like for 6 months we played really well. If we'd kept up like these kind of standards when he first came in for this year, we could have been much higher up the table. So, but if I'm a fan, right, and if I'm hearing from like this article, look, the players really bought into it this season and they tried their best, but you know what, it just wasn't working, even though they gave it their all. But I can almost accept a lot more responsibility for Conte. But if I'm hearing from these players, they didn't like the training methods, they found it boring, found it repetitive, I'm like, that even makes me more frustrated in a way with the players, in a way, because it's like, why couldn't you just held up those standards you held last season? Why all of a sudden you starting to lose our motivation? Why? Like, surely you have that professionalism on you.
Sim, the first thing you said is the same as the second thing you said. Like Conte, like a coach and a coaching staff, you have to engage players to make them better. Conte comes in, like it's not going that great for a while, but they find a way to make the squad. And I've definitely felt that they found a way to make the best parts of the squad work. And we scored goals and we did well. We got to the end of that season. But did any of us think if this can't just continue like this? Something's got to improve. We've got to bring players in, got to get the bad defenders out. And then obviously you can't just your job as a manager just isn't like, oh yeah, bring me in great players and then we're going to keep doing these same training drills every single week. Have you ever played for a football team and you do the same drills every single week? As a football player, you do not want training to be easy. It's never about that. You want training to be hard. You want it to be hard, but you want it to be interesting, new things. What's the coach got? And if it's the same thing every week, well, you know that on Sundays and Saturdays that when we get into this situation, we get battered. Okay, so surely the training is going to be now adapting to what do we do in these situations? And we all can see that when Spurs get into certain situations, they go blank. 3-1 up, see the game out, blank. teams now
Everyone
coming
needs to
in
keep
a
things.
plan.
You always need to keep things moving. And to your point,
Yeah.
Brains, earlier, if you're in a job, it doesn't matter what job you are. If you're the manager, you have. If you are the manager of a team of people that cold call, it's a very boring, repetitive job. But you've got to find ways to make it fun, like play games with the people doing the calls, like have competitions, do little things that keep them occupied. Even my dog Bugsy gets bored when I turn left out of my house, and she knows I'm taking her on the same walk I take her 90% of the time. If I turn right and I go down the other way, she's like, "Oh, something new's going on." Like there's like you need to keep creatures.
Your dog has a
human
poor
beings.
mentality, Sean.
Oh, yeah. An upgrade.
Blame the manager. Blame the manager.
I'm blaming you, Sean, for that. Look, I think that was a good discussion. We'll move on to the next topic. And this was
I was going to say
sorry?
what Ash had to say. That's right.
No, go on. Switch it. Go on.
I was gonna.
I'll get my voice.
You'll get your voice, and don't worry. The next topic as well was talking about Conte, and obviously there's a perennial question: was he backed? Was he not? But I want to read a couple of excerpts from the article, and I want to know if there's an inherent conflict in what was said in this article. It was talking about the first paragraph is talking about the summer and the business we'd done, and it says Tottenham ultimately signed 6 senior players, and obviously with the benefit of hindsight, how many of them did improve Conte's first team? Perisic was the only obvious upgrade in the first 11, but he turned out to be a disappointment. If Conte wanted to show that Spurs had a higher ceiling than just 4th place, then he did not quite have the players to do it. And then the second paragraph, which is near the end of the article, it says it should not be forgotten that Spurs finished 6th and 7th the 2 seasons before Conte showed up, and would likely have done the same if they had stuck with Nuno. If Spurs are to finish 4th this season, then a lot of it will be down to the foundations that Conte has given Tottenham, and the solid foundation to finish 4th. But then the last line is, but with Conte, Spurs pay him £15 million per year, and do they pay a manager of that kind of elite level just to keep finishing 4th? So one paragraph they're saying, if Tottenham wanted to show that their ceiling isn't just 4th, Conte didn't have the players to do it. And in the next paragraph, they're saying, but if you're going to pay a manager £15 million a year, are you doing that just to finish 4th? So isn't there an inherent, in that sense, is he kind of set up to fail in a way? Because you're not giving him the players to show there's a higher ceiling than 4th, but then you're saying, well, if we're paying you £15 million a year, we're not doing that just to finish 4th. So is that kind of doomed to fail in a way? I'll go to you, Ash, first on that.
I think it's more than Conte. And I know it's the stereotypical answer, but it comes down to culture. Your culture, the reason why Conte was able to go to your Inter Milans and your Chelseas and your Juventus, their cultures compared to Tottenham Hotspurs, especially over the last 30 years, I'd say, our culture hasn't been of that going past the top 4. We've been quite a lot of the time in the 90s, we were mid-table team at best. In the noughties, we moved up a bit. And then obviously in the last 5 or 8 years, we've been a top four side. And so when you have an elite coach coming in, trying to change things, it's going to take time. He's not going to be able to come in and change the fortunes of a club and get the club past that top 4 sticking point. As the people above him are making decisions as well as himself. He has some power, but ultimately, when he's talking about solid foundations, we assume that he's talking about the back line. And so when your first signing is a striker, when we're heavily stocked in the attacking lineup, no wonder we didn't push on from that top 4 position. The decision making, whoever it was, whether it's Paratici, whether it's his team of scouts, because even if you look past Paratici, there's a number of job titles that are in this club that, what are they doing? What are they recruiting? What is their actual job? They are affecting our decisions. Whose decision was it to bring in another attacker as opposed to prioritizing a centre back or a right wing back, something that we were crying out for. The ethos for a long time was, the DNA supposedly was a top 4 club, or a Champions League club, should I say, that produced young players, young academy players that pushed into 11. That's my idea, what I thought Tottenham was. And I think as a neutral, loads of neutral fans, sorry, they were looking at Tottenham like how we are looking at Brighton, an exciting team. You know, that's why lots of people were getting behind Spurs, because we had that kind of DNA. That was our thing. And when you move away with your first 2 signings being Perisic and Fraser, Forster, they're not of the DNA. However, there is a compromise because you want to adhere to the powers that be in Conte. Conte wants ready now players. But why did we get a Conte in if that's his ethos? Am I making sense? The 2 DNAs are conflicting.
100%.
One wants ready now, one wants players for the future. And so that's why
on Daniel
we
Levy.
went. Huh?
That is on Daniel Levy. Like he screwed up there with that decision.
Sorry, big up to everyone in the comments here. Big up to everyone watching. Can you just clip that? Can you screen record?
Post it every day.
Dan receipt.
That is a receipt king right there, yeah? Oh, sorry, that way. The receipt king. I don't know which way. But yeah, basically, that is poor management from the top.
Yeah.
So if you knew your priority, you knew you scraped top 4. We just got top 4. We got it by what, 1 point, 2 points? However many points it was. It wasn't a massive margin. And you knew to get over the line, your priority was to fix the back line, whether it be back 5 or back 3. And your first decision is to buy an attacking forward. Then I'm sorry, that's on you. And that culture, it doesn't matter who comes in, that culture will still be there. The ethos will still be there, and the decision making will still be there. There's players that there's people around Paratici we've signed. Like we got a guy from Everton, and he's a part of the recruitment. But what is his job title? We've got other players. We've got other directors of football that are around Paratici. They've got positions. What are they doing? Who's running the club? Who's in charge? Do you know what I'm saying? There's so many areas that we're not all looking at as fans that have resulted in the downfall of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And it's very frustrating to see that even if, I don't know, a Nagelsmann came in and he was the right fit, because before Conte, that was the guy that Daniel Levy wanted. He wanted an upcoming manager, a young manager that will be able to work with the youth, develop them, play them, and push on from there and, you know, get that Champions League football, make us competitive. But when that option is not available and you're taking 72 days to make an appointment or find them a suitable appointment, and you come up with a Nuno and you talk about you want to stay with the DNA about attacking football, you know, front-footed football, and you do the opposite, then that is a complete flaw of the hierarchy at the top. Now, there's no point in me saying all of this and saying, because I'm not moaning, I'm just literally stating for what I can see. So I'm not saying like, oh, my days, you know, need to tear my hair out and sack this off and blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying what I'm seeing. And I think that's the result of Conte getting frustrated, because it filters down. The players getting frustrated, it filters down. And that is the reason why I don't think Conte has been tactically flexible, because he's not happy with his squad and he doesn't think the players that he could bring in during the game is enough quality for our team to keep up that level. And that's the reason why we've been losing a lot of games, because when we've needed to make that change, Conte's refused to do it. And guess what? In that middle, you get, like fans say all the time, we get overrun. Why is he so stubborn? We're lacking energy, etc., etc. But in his mind, there's not enough quality that he feels that he can step onto the pitch. And I think that's why you're getting articles like this where he's losing the dressing room, he's losing.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a player, you need to be intrinsically motivated yourself. You don't need our coach always saying, "Yeah, come on, we can do this. Come on, yeah, come on, guys, let's go to Barney's, yay!" Like, come on, you need to be. You're a footballer. That's your passion. That's your love. Like, I don't have to tell Brains. I don't have to tell Sean. I don't have to tell Sim. Like, come on, let's do a show. Let's, sit down and talk about football. Everyone wants to do it. Like, everyone's motivated by ourselves because we are grown people with our own minds, albeit they are young men. You know what I mean? They are young men. But at the same time, like, if we're not talking about new topics and we're talking about the same topics all the time, then we're going to get sick of it. You know what I mean? We're going to get sick of talking about the same talking points. Not everyday Levy, I'm hearing band shows say now, because they're getting sick of it. So it's the same with...
Say that again? What did you say then?
Not everyday Levy. We're getting bored of it. Yeah, come on, yeah. Let's go. And that's it. Go on. Next.
I'd say that's why Conte's got to go. Like, and that's why Nagelsmann or someone exciting's got to come in right now, because this isn't over. Like that you could get a really good manager with an exciting way of being and just a different way of being, and this we could go on a run easily. Spurs, we never went on a run this season, and we've been waiting for it, and this is an opportunity to bring Poch in. I'd love that. We'd go on a run. We'd finish top 4 easy, 100%, because it re-galvanized the players. Nagelsmann probably do the same. And Nagelsmann, you've got something that can really build to the future. But you need something to change now. You need these players to be revitalized. Like we have to also remember that we support Spurs, right? We support the players. We have to remember that. We can't just bring big managers in with ego and who don't do their job, but also who were set up to not do their job. Conte was never going to get backed by Levy. We knew Conte wanted the type of players Conte was going to want to bring in. That's what we were excited about. Levy was never going to give that. So it was never going to work. So having Conte there is like being in a relationship with a super, super hot girl and you're punching. And every day you're thinking, every man's looking at her. Like, and you're paranoid and you can never get comfortable. That's why the article, like one of the lines,
buddy.
One very different from me, I'll tell you that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a line in the article that said he never once turned down the opportunity to leverage uncertainty in the public. He never once said he was going to sign on. He never once let the players feel like, I'm here, like you're investing into my system. Like, so let's do it together. He never once did that. So he never got the players on side for me. And that is if that's what you do, dead. You gotta go. So that's why I thought he like as soon as I realized like, oh, that he didn't want to come back, and he's now got this operation. He's come back early, and now he's away. So all of that is like, nah, I don't buy any.
What's weird though, right?
He doesn't want to come back.
I'm usually like the most likely person on any panel to go after anywhere other than Daniel Levy, just because of the natural kind of balance of most panels that I'm on. But on this particular one, I actually, even though I think that I'm Conte out, I don't want him around there. I think he's a wrong guy, but I always did. On this particular one, I think that there are variables that you have to kind of give Conte the benefit of the doubt on, or like, you don't know what would have been. And I know that injuries are always a thing that every team faces, and it shouldn't be an excuse.
Of course, yeah.
And I know that when we saw that list of like how many combined days or matches of players did we lose, but that's a little bit deceptive because it doesn't show in that list how influential were the players that were out. And I think, Conte has had to deal with this season an incredible amount of disruption to areas of the team all at the same time. Like for the first half of the season, there was a consistent theme of our forwards, being out all at the same time. Obviously, we got away with Harry Kane not being out, but Richarlison was always injured. Decky was, tweaking his hamstring or whatever every single time. Even since he's come back, he hasn't really got over it. You can see he never drops into second gear. And, Sonny, obviously, with the face thing has not helped his confidence. And confidence is one of the reasons why his form's been so bad anyway. So, and then as soon as that whole kind of the forward line issue got resolved, then there was problems in midfield and there's problems at the defense. So there is in spite of that, we're still fourth, which is a testament to him. But for me personally, just to get back to like, the Conte thing overall, again, like I'm not for Conte, and I lay a lot of responsibility on Conte's feet for stubbornness and tactical rigidity, lack of curiosity in players that we've signed, lack of or over faith in players that he trusts that don't deserve it. But I blame Daniel Levy for this entire environment, it being a thing anyway. Excuse me, guys, I've got a tickle in my throat.
Sorry.
Jose Mourinho was the experiment. If you wanted to pivot to a defensive manager that came with a big brand name that could satiate the fan base and think that this is, that he's going to be the catalyst. If it is the manager that is responsible for getting the juice from the squeeze, he's the guy who's going to implement that winners mentality. Pochettino did brilliantly, but didn't have the kind of the chops when it comes to winning historically. Jose does. We tried it; it didn't work. Right. Then you had the whole debacle throughout the summer of bringing up Fonseca, then turning him down last minute, then going after Gattuso and the fan base saying no, thank you, and then us pivoting away from him. Then the 60 days without a manager. Then we bring Nuno in, lasted for 2 months. That whole thing was airing dirty laundry in public. It was an embarrassment. And then after that, to go after Conte, which to Ashmatic's point, completely agree with you, mate. Oil and water doesn't mix. You've got a club that has made it clear, not that they communicate effectively anyway, but when they do, they say we go after young players that we can develop, and we want that ethos. And the football philosophical thing doesn't even need to be expressed. That is Tottenham DNA. If there is one, that is what it is. And then you go and hire a third consecutive manager that is the antithesis of that, and he is. Maybe he's a more relevant, more recent version of Jose Mourinho. Maybe I'm not even sure if that's real anyway. But to me, Daniel Levy screwed up and takes the capital L for why we're in this situation. We've wasted 18 months under Conte, and look, like I say, people probably are shocked that I'm saying it, but I blame Daniel Levy for us in the situation we currently find ourselves in. That's not to say that Antonio Conte's football, his stubbornness or rigidity or any of those things get a pass. They don't. But from now on, Daniel Levy has to make the next decision, whoever it is. He has to get this bang on. And it's more complicated than just a manager. It has to be about the philosophy, has to be about the director of football as well, because the sword of Damocles is hanging over Paratici's neck and could be cut at any time. And if he can't do his job, then where do you go from there? So this particular moment for Daniel Levy is a put up or shut up. You've got to get this right. And if you don't, there's nobody, even people like myself, that are going to give you any more patience.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with that. And I think if you're going to bring in managers like Mourinho and Conte, then you have to do it right. You have to make sure that you're giving them tools to really compete at the top. And you could say, well, if they're such elite managers, then they should be able to turn water into wine. But at the end of the day, every job they've been at, yes, you could argue whether they're overperformed or whatever. They've had the tools to really compete for a title. Sometimes they win it, sometimes they don't. A lot of the times they do end up winning it. But you can't just bring them in and expect them to turn Eric Dyer and Sanchez and Longley and all these players into title winners, and that's what they want. That's how they get motivated. They don't really care about finishing top four or all these little wins here and there, like the boardroom one. They get motivated and they really care about winning trophies and being the best. And they will ultimately get frustrated when that's not happening. And so when I hear the articles say Tottenham don't really have the squad to show that fourth is higher than their ceiling, well then I end up looking at it and thinking, well then he's obviously going to end up getting frustrated. That's obviously what's going to end up happening. He's going to lose that motivation because that's what keeps him alive, is be competing for those titles. And if you're going to bring him in and then not give him a squad capable of winning the title, then I always see that as like, is it kind of doomed to fail? And that's how I see it. It kind of was. He was always going to blow up at some point because he's not going to keep that. But then you could argue, well, is it on him to show his elite level management by getting these players above their station like Pochettino did? And maybe that is a case. Maybe you can say, well, it's on you to kind of get more out of these players than you're getting out of them. But at the end of the day, if getting more, if their limit is always going to be not going to be a title challenge, then whatever that limit is, it's still not going to be what he wants. If you know what I mean, he can get more out of these players, but is that limit still not a title challenge? If it is, then what's
Massive
the
glass
point?
ceiling at Tottenham. Yeah.
But do you not think there would have been a conversation? I would be, any other business, any other industry, like the industries that I'm in with like music and film, there is such long negotiation of contracts and what my minimum commitment, what's your minimum commitment, then how do we go to the next part of the contract? There's so much length and debate over what we can give each other in contracts. In football, I cannot imagine for a second that Conte sits there and goes, let me see the squad. Okay, all right, yeah, sign me up.
But Brains, you have to remember in July, before we appointed Nuno, we spoke to Conte, and Conte ended up walking away from the negotiations because he didn't feel like we were ambitious enough. What happened? What must that look? I don't know. I wasn't in the room, but I have to assume that after the Nuno disaster, Spurs panicked and just pretty much made empty promises to get him through the door. That's more. I think that's the most likely scenario that happened, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In terms of empty promises, in terms of like, look, you come here, get us top 4, and we'll give you everything you can to compete, and we'll give you everything you can to make us title challengers. And that didn't quite happen.
But then if I'm Conte, I am insanely dumb and naive if I don't get that in contract. If I don't get that in writing, that I get these players. I am
smart enough to get a contract installment saying, if you fire me, absent me slandering the club, if I speak out of turn, but you fire me for cause, then I get an extra year's pay. Like I think that Daniel Levy was a moron for allowing that clause to be put in the contract. And I agree with you, Brains, that if he didn't put in at least a guaranteed minimum spend, I don't know if you can always get the guaranteed on who you get, but you can surely get a guaranteed minimum spend. It happens in my walk of world, in investment banking back in the day. Like you'd always have contracts that would say you'd be guaranteed a certain commission, right? Either it would be a percentage of what you earn or whatever else, right? You'd always get some sort of guarantees around performance.
But then this feeds into the idea that this sounds like so clear to any sensible human, but you would have the conversations, and your lawyers. I mean, lawyers are the ones really that it won't even be Levy talking to Conte. They'll have the first cuts, and then it'll be Conte talking to his lawyer, Levy talking to his lawyer, and then they put a contract together. But the fact that these points weren't fought through, and that we're in this situation where both sides are really don't have a tight contract. That for me, it makes it go, okay, well, Conte saw this as a short-term thing. 18 months, fine. No real overcommitment from me. 18 months, no real overcommitment from you. Fine. I'll have a little crack, and then we'll go our separate ways. And that's why he's never once shown his, I'm going to stay on. I'm going to stay on. It's never, you know what I mean? So it's always been a short-term thing. Safety to get away from him. Safety to get away there. And that's what it's been. It's never for them, for the people who are really in the know, like Levy, Conte, Spurs, the team. It's never really been, this is going to be our shot to win a title. This is going to be our shot to win a cup. Because we could have won a cup this season. No other season for the last fucking 10 seasons we're a better situation than we had this season. And you can clearly see that was not the incentive. The incentive was just eke into the top 4 again, then move on.
All right, and talking about moving on, looks like we are going to be moving on from Antonio Conte at the moment. Obviously, look, he's not returning from Italy as things stand. He's still out there. It seems as though he won't be returning, and Tottenham, being widely reported, looking at alternatives. So if Tottenham are looking at alternatives, then I think we should as well. So we've got some managers that we're going to be talking about in the next section, and who we think then the next appointment should be. And I don't think there's any better place to start than the manager who's just come available as of today. And Thomas Tuchel won't be the next Tottenham manager because he has gone to Bayern Munich. But that means Julian Nagelsmann has now been sacked as Bayern Munich manager, and he's become the bookies' favourite immediately to become the new Tottenham manager. He was widely reported to be in the running for the Spurs job when Spurs sacked Jose Mourinho. Or was it before Jose Mourinho? I think when Spurs sacked Pochettino, he was widely, and I think when Spurs sacked Jose Mourinho as well, both times he was widely reported to be in the running for the Spurs job. Now he's available. is this someone who we want? Is this someone who fits the bill of what Tottenham are looking for now that he's become available? Or is he still too inexperienced? He's still very young. He's like still in his 30s. Is he the guy you want, Brains? Nagelsmann?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like what he's lost 3 games all this season. Like, how dare you lose 3 games? Like, it's absolutely insane. He's got an incredible record in the Champions League. You know, Tuchel is going to come in now and again jump into some other man's bed with his girlfriend and make her climax. Like he did that. Lampard was doing all right with him in the Champions League, jumped into bed with his wife, made her come, got the trophy. Now he's going to do the same with Nagelsmann. It's crazy. I honestly, I can't. Who knows what goes through these kind of directors' heads over at Bayern, and what they maybe. I look at them as they're a very long-term club, and I think they can see that there was some big changes happening, and God knows why they could possibly see negatives in him, other than maybe behind the scenes and maybe that his ideologies and where the forecast of where he thinks he can take the team. I mean, maybe he wants to work with certain types of players, and it's already too late for them. Maybe they're bringing in or they're looking at a different road, but. To go from Nagelsmann to Tuchel, all right. I guess that's just this guy's good at jumping in late and winning a Champions League. Who knows, But for us, one person's negative is another person's positive. So for us, it would be amazing if it almost be, it'd almost be too good to be true. Don't you guys feel that? It's
it's kind of perfect timing, isn't it? We're looking for a manager, and they've just decided. Apparently, as well, part of the reason it's all happening now is because Spurs are closely looking at Thomas Tuchel, and maybe that is kind of triggered Bayern Munich into action, because Bayern really like Thomas Tuchel and have always wanted him for a while, and they believe that maybe Nagelsmann isn't the man to take them to the treble that they're on board for at the moment, and maybe it's slipping away. And even though they've won 8 out of 8 Champions League games this season, they're only a point behind Dortmund in the league. Apparently they see maybe the change is the perfect time for them, for Tuchel to kind of take the baton off Nagelsmann. But I agree. I think Nagelsmann, he plays the football we want. He's a young, progressive manager, could be here for many, many years. I think it could be the perfect choice. Ash, Julian Nagelsmann, is he your number 1 choice now? Could this be perfect timing for Tottenham? And would you be willing to wait till the summer to get him in, or would it have to be now?
I feel like if we're going to get Nagelsmann, we have to kind of put some type of pre-contract in from early, because you've got Real Madrid sniffing around. They're looking to get rid of Ancelotti. They've been following him since 2018. So a similar track record to us. I know we're 2017 a year earlier, but when Real Madrid come knocking, most managers follow or players follow. And then you look at the Chelsea project with Potter. Potter obviously notoriously isn't doing too well. And the American owners kind of want a young project manager, someone that's going to, develop their very youthful squads that they're going to have for a very long time. And he fits the bill so much. Is he the right man for Spurs? With the infrastructure that we have and the current board that we have, it's debatable. Would I love to see him? Love. Gone. No,
you're not gone. You're not gone. We can hear you.
No.
We thought you were just going to answer your own rhetorical question.
He's a man-to-man part, arm around shoulders. He develops the youth. He's everything that we need, everything that we want. I know that the argument is that he hasn't won anything, so he's inexperienced at winning titles, etc. But if
neither have we.
Nagelsmann.
Ego to the side, right? And this goes for any manager that you want to pick. If you want to pick Poch,
didn't you win a title? Didn't you win the league title?
Nagelsmann
won
won the
last
Bundesliga.
year with Bayern, I think.
And he's won 2 cups.
I wouldn't last year.
Yeah,
I know. I wouldn't last year. But what I'm saying to you, hear my point. My point is, I'm happy for Spurs to drop out the top 4. I would like Spurs to get top 4 this season, obviously, because we can attract a top keeper, top defenders, and then we can get our solid foundation, and we can attract a top coach like Nagelsmann. However, if we were to not finish in the top 4 with a Nagelsmann, I still would be happy, because the argument is, he's not title winning, he's not That's the argument. Like, he hasn't done anything. You know what I'm saying? Compared to like the Contes that we have right now and Mourinho's that we had before. But we've proven that when it comes to big coaches, that model doesn't fit with Spurs. The project works better. We work better with project. When there's a lower expectation in the fan base, then that fan base give the managers more time. And if we give the managers more time and we're not like booing and screaming the managers out, then Levy's less reluctant to pull the trigger because he only reacts when he thinks the fans are coming for him. If he thinks the fans are coming for him, that's when he panics and he sacks the manager, or he will sack someone, do you know what I'm saying, to save his own skin. That's how he is. He's very like, he's a coward in that sense, you know what I mean? But I feel like because Nagelsmann is young, he's going to be less pragmatic than like your Levy or even your Conte, because Conte to extent is very safe. He doesn't risk changing the squad, and that's the reason why our squad hasn't really been rotated that much. That's the reason why we came into the FA Cup and that team was untried and tested. We went out to Sheffield United because they hadn't had many games, because they hadn't had a lot of rhythm, they hadn't had that energy, they hadn't had that chemistry together as a team, that particular set 11. That's why we got knocked out. And because Conte was so stubborn and wasn't able to change it throughout the season, give like, other players 10 minutes, 15 minutes there. Imagine he'd given some of our fringe players a bit more time, then he wouldn't have to bring back like a Lucas off the bench, because those other players would have had more game time, more minutes. They would have been able to. He would have been able to look at them and see them how they work.
You've got more versatility, and you've got more play. Yeah,
like you were saying, Brains, they could have that little Videotron and say, "Look, you did this well, but then I want you to do this." Yeah. That man management has been missing. Like that Harry Redknapp was really good at that kind of he wasn't tactical genius, but he was good at getting everyone on side. And I feel like a young manager can relate to the younger players a lot more, because their career time as a playing footballer was a lot closer. So they're nearer to like more the modern style football. They understand what's going on.
They got that millennium swag.
They got them exactly. They might even go to the clubs where they go. You never know. You know what I'm trying to say? No, I'm joking. But you get the idea. The culture, the identity, the togetherness is gonna be there with him. And that's my argument against those fans that are saying, "Oh, he hasn't got, the credentials to be a top manager."
I think he's overqualified.
Yeah, I agree.
Won too much.
Yeah, but even if it's not Nagelsmann, I'm saying even if it's not Nagelsmann, I'm happy whoever takes in charge from the summer. And like I said, I prefer him to take charge now, not to say like, I just want him in. Like how they got Man United got Ten Hag in. Mm-hmm. Like he was just there, he was in, but he wasn't taking charge of the games, but he was just there watching. I would be happy for Nagelsmann to just do that, just come in, sit down, just watch the games, analyze everything, while Mason just carries on. Do you know what I mean? And whether we get top 4 or not, it doesn't matter. But at least because I just feel like if we leave him, he's going to be naked and they're going to eat him up like literally for lunch. The top clubs come sniffing around, and that's how I feel with any player we have. Because the type of board we have, they don't react fast enough in certain situations. Mm-hmm. So like in the January window just gone, we spent the whole window on Porro when we could have been looking at other targets when we knew we needed to strengthen in the back line, and we didn't do that. And then because there was an opportunity, I'm going against what I said, I know, but because there was an opportunity for Dan Juma, we kind of jumped at that. But then we were still like messing around with Porro, do you know what I mean? And then Porro was the last minute, and then Paratici couldn't get done, and then Levy had to come and save the day, apparently. Like, oh yeah, guys, look, I've saved the day. Look, I did the negotiations. And for me, because he's so, I know it goes back to that, like he's so involved in football when he said he's not going to be out of football. I just don't trust him to get this Nagelsmann deal over the line. But yeah, to answer the question,
so true.
I feel like
Sean, is it a Levy play though? Is this the Levy masterclass to show interest in Nagelsmann, to show
Tuchel,
interest
you mean?
in Tuchel, to then get Nagels,
Listen, I'm always someone that wants to give credit to Daniel Levy, even if it's not necessarily due generally. But on on this one, it might have been a Levy masterclass, or it could have been a Tuchel masterclass, feigning interest in the Tottenham job to really get, and then himself leaking out the information to get my agent, let someone in Germany know that I'm in deep conversation with Tottenham, and then Bayern Munich pulled the trigger because he wanted to go home.
If you could take Pochettino, say if it's a case of like Nagelsmann's only coming in at the end of the season, but Pochettino will come in now, would you take Poch now?
No, I think Nagelsmann.
Sorry. No, sorry, mate. Go on. Sorry, I don't know who that was aimed at.
No. Yeah, I just said it. I'll take Nagelsmann still. That's it.
For me, Nagelsmann is. I know he's an egomaniac, and I know that there's no perfect science, right? There's no perfect solution either. What's interesting, I did a live stream a couple of days ago, and we had like everyone playing the thumb game, and we went through every single manager. I'm sure I'm not going to spoil it, but in a nutshell, like there was no consistent, like no one was really getting like overwhelming support. Not Poch, not anybody. For me, Nagelsmann popping up. I love the fact that he's psychologically based, because I do, whilst I don't agree with what Conte or the way that Conte said what he said and why he said what he said, I think he was right what he said, and that Tottenham do have a psychological barrier. And if this guy is the sort of person that goes out and goes about the 30% that he thinks is important and has those unique relationships and nuances, like, you know, mannerisms, and tries to figure out which particular version of the carrot and the stick each player needs, and doesn't want to outsource that to some third party who's not going to be in the dressing room, you know, some sports psychologist, then all the better. If he's that kind of like creative and innovative in his stance. And I watched back, you know, he was the first person in Germany back when he was at Hoffenheim. He put a giant, like a massive, I don't know, 40-foot iPad or whatever on the training ground so that he could stop training sessions when he was doing his high intensity training sessions and pivot and replay videos immediately. So he didn't have to disrupt training sessions and take them back into the training room or in the dressing room to show this stuff. So he's always thinking about what's coming. And when you look at his ability to pivot like with his tactics, I don't think it's right to reflect on his style at Bayern Munich, because at Bayern Munich, he's always going to have one of the best squads, if like obviously the best squad in Germany. And so when you look at his formation there, it was like 3+1, because it was 4-2-3-1 on paper, but you had the two centre-backs and the right-back that wasn't quite as progressive, that would sit in when they had the ball. You had a DM, and then you had the left back that would playing more as a left wing forward. So it was almost like a 3-1-5-1. And it was brilliantly aggressive, brilliantly possession-based, but he was playing with Bayern Munich's squad against teams that were always weaker. So I don't think you should really reflect on his system there. Take it back to Leipzig, though, and he played very, very well with, you know, a 3-5-2 situation when they had the ball that pivoted back to some version of either a 5-2-3 or a 3-4-3, however you want to say it, when they didn't. And I think personally that really suits the system of players that Tottenham will have, subject to us improving our centre-backs. You've got Pedro Porro and Udogie that are coming in. Neither of those two players, I'm not saying they can't do it, but neither of them have been tested playing in a back four. Both of them are at their best playing in a wing-back system. And he was at his best with that wing-back system in a squad and for a team that was not the best in the league like he had at Bayern Munich. So for me, I think that Nagelsmann makes a ton of sense. And he's very similar to Amorim. The only difference between him and Amorim is that I think he comes with a better brand, but also Amorim comes with a £30 million release clause. Does Daniel Levy want to pay that and also pay 20 million quid to Conte? How much of an impact does that have on Tottenham's transfer budget in the summer? So
Nagelsmann's training will be electric. Like it will really engage the players, you know.
Are you confident we can convince Nagelsmann to come?
I don't know what motivates him. I don't know the person well enough, or I haven't researched him well enough to know whether it's money or whether it's ego or whether it's a project. I don't know. But look, you know, obviously there's always going to be some trigger that impacts somebody, and it depends also on whether or not Real Madrid pull the trigger and you know cancel Ancelotti out. If they do that now, then I think we're obviously not going to succeed. But there's also rumors that Pochettino, you know, is favored by Real Madrid. So, you know, what could eventuate is some really crazy managerial merry-go-round that involves Tottenham Hotspur and two Because Gavin's been more
All right,
reasonable.
well, sorry, we're back, guys. We're back.
Yeah. All right.
Apologies again for the technical difficulties. The internet did fail us a bit. But look, we spoke about Nagelsmann. Let's go on to the second bookie's favourite, which is Mauricio Pochettino. Obviously, I'm guessing we're all in agreement that Nagelsmann would probably be our first choice at the moment, seeing he's just come onto the market. Obviously, there's big rumours about Mauricio Pochettino. We Spurs have kind of never really got over him ever since he left the club. We're still pining for Pochettino back. There's always that phrase, never go back to your ex. You should never go back to a former manager. But he's a manager who clearly still has a very strong affinity for Tottenham. He does play the Tottenham way in terms of attacking football. He knows how to work under this ownership as well. Maybe he's as well learned from some mistakes of his previous tenure. Is he someone you could get excited about and on board for, or is it something that's kind of you feel like maybe it's not a good idea just yet to go back to him? I'll go with you, Sean, first.
Listen, he's my second favourite. Until last night, I kind of figured out that I was probably settling on an order of Poch or Tuchel number 1 or number 2. Not much difference between them. And then Amorim number 3. But as I was saying, I think that the consequences of having to deal with the sporting chairman again, who's held us over a table, I'm not sure about him. But with Pochettino, he's definitely my second favourite at the moment. Just because it's simple, right? It's an easier transition. It will definitely get everyone back behind it. The reservations I have about having him come back in is whether or not he will have the square pegs for the round holes. His favourite formation being the kind of 4-3-3. Again, it doesn't matter what manager we bring in. Everything about their success will depend on whether or not we improve the back line in the summer. If we don't do a good enough job hiring or recruiting new defenders primarily, obviously we need a new goalkeeper and we might need a new creative player, but the defenders are the priority. Any manager will fail unless we improve. If we do improve, then I think it's easier to transition to continue into a kind of wing-back system because of the unknowns about Porro and about Udogie. And if you do go to a back four system, then you only really need one superstar centre-back to come in and then just improve like on the squad level in that role. But we just don't know whether or not there's going to be whether Udogie and Porro can really transition. I'm sure they can. I'm sure they're adaptable, but whether or not time will tell. One thing I would say is that what does make it interesting about Pochettino is that some of the people that are on loan, or at least one person particularly, may be able to come back and improve our left-back situation in Serge Reguilon. I think the only reason Serge Reguilon was ostracised a little bit from the squad was because he had a problem with Antonio Conte, and I'm not entirely sure if that same problem will exist with Pochettino. And I actually really liked Reguilon. I prefer him as the permanent backup or permanent rotation player to Ryan Sessegnon. And obviously, I don't think Perisic can play in a left back situation anyway. So, in terms of the football, I think it'll be great. In terms of maybe the catalyst for keeping Harry Kane. Harry Kane, again, his future is it may already be determined in his mind. But if it's not, if he is open to a new contract, a lot of that chicken and the egg situation is going to be dependent. Whether or not we can have a conversation with his intermediaries will depend on whether or not he knows who is going to be playing for. If the answer is somebody who's lesser known, if it's a Thomas Frank or a De Zerbi or an Amorim, then maybe Harry Kane's not interested in that like he wasn't interested in Nuno. If it's Pochettino, I think the chances of keeping Harry Kane exponentially improve. And to me, I personally want Harry Kane to stay. I personally want Sonny to stay. I understand that there's an argument to say, factory reset the whole thing, try and get some money for Harry Kane now rather than lose him in the summer. But I think personally, I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of disruption quite yet. And if there is a chance of getting Harry Kane to sign a new contract, I think it looks incredibly more healthy with someone like Pochettino at the helm.
Yeah,
Brains, Poch, you want him?
Yeah, like I was saying, if you could if Nagelsmann needs to come in the summer, but Poch should come in now, then I take Poch. I would take Poch in a heartbeat. Initially when we were kind of early on before Conte and we were looking at let's get Poch back. I was like, you can't go backwards. But now, considering that what we did with Poch and considering that he would know what he's dealing with. So I think you would hope that his lawyer would be able to get some sort of clauses in, and that he would be coming in, and he would know that Spurs' mentality is that they have to have some young players. He knows how Spurs would have to work in the transfer market, and I just think you're right. Like, I think that's the, I think Kane would love to work with him again. Like, and even if it's just for that his last, have a real go at it in his last season if he goes. But I'd love to see that. So yeah, I think considering that some of the players that we got, I think he would probably get he'd probably get something out of Spence. And if you did then have Reguilon and a Doji one side, and then Porro and Spence the other, I think you're starting to look. And then you really just need like your Laporte or someone really good, like your two more really good centre backs, and it's starting to look really good, So I think he would bring he would re-energize the fans. I think there would be a lot of positivity there. So there's a lot. So but if Nagelsmann wanted to come in now, I'd be like, oh yeah, obviously, because it's something new. But the new is the unknown, and so what you think is a drop in an ocean of what you don't know. And right now, Nagelsmann is the ocean that we don't know. He could come in and reading and seeing what Mourinho and what Conte have said, that, Spurs are kind of like really, there's a malaise at Spurs, that nobody there, right down to the cooks, the medical team is lackadaisical. Like, nobody works at a high level despite having the most highest level equipment. And, and that's sometimes what happens a lot. So I think a Nagelsmann would come in, hopefully he would get to bring his team in and re-energize that. But then I also think Poch turning back up and going, Daddy's back in town. Like, everyone would be like, all right, let's get back to how we did things, So I don't think you lose with either of them. But if Poch was available now, I'd take him. And then we'll get Nagelsmann next time.
Exactly. Get him when he's 40.
What about if both are available tomorrow morning?
If both were available tomorrow morning, I'd probably go Nagelsmann. Just because of that unknown, the complete unknown that we might get. But I also have a big part of me that worries that 18 months later, we're in the same boat. And I don't think 18
That's
months
going to happen
later,
anyway, mate. Let's just expect that.
I don't think so with Poch. I got the feeling in this time that Poch has been away that he kind of like came around a little bit to kind of thinking, like, it wasn't all bad there, and Levy wasn't all bad. He has a good relationship with Levy, apparently. Apparently they go on dinners and stuff, and they're actually quite close. So like that, you don't feel that way about someone who screwed you over. So I think there's a lot we didn't know about that situation. So I think that he would actually come in and go and look at it like, this is a chance to do it all right, and kind of this is my best shot to actually do something with a bunch of players. So I think it would be a good thing. So maybe it would be Poch would be the right decision.
Ash, what do you reckon? Pochettino, would he be one for you? No?
The biggest problem that people put out for Poch is the pressing. Press. Can Kane press the way he used to press from him 5 or 6 years ago or 4 years ago?
Not in a 9, but maybe in a 10.
Can Sonny press the way he wants? Can the front three press? Can we press as a team the way we used to under Poch? And I think that was some of the biggest question marks that loads of people had about not bringing Poch back. You look at PSG, Poch had them pressing, and had a lot of divas as well in that PSG team. What would it take for him to get that Tottenham side pressing again? Because obviously a lot of the players are complaining about the training, etc. But would they be willing to carry on that rigorous training? Because that's what they complained about towards Poch's tenure, wasn't it? They were like, training's too hard.
But Ash, the press issue is gonna be a problem with Nagelsmann. Like, Nagelsmann doesn't exactly have a standoff football vibe. They're gonna play high press at times as well. I think they're just gonna have to figure out how to play. Like
the press is easier if you can squeeze the line up higher, right?
Yeah.
If you get the defensive line that are hanging out on the edge of the center circle, And so the press doesn't have to be 30-yard sprints all the time. But that is, again, dependent on having centre-backs that are incredibly pacey.
It's my other argument as well.
Sorry, mate.
So
Yeah,
no, that's fine. It's fine. He's chimed in at the right time. So the other argument was the centre-backs issue. And we all know that, it all depends on the board. We've got Hincapi, albeit that he's inexperienced, but he's a young player, someone that's highly rated and someone that we've been looking at. We've looked at in the World Cup. We know what his ability is. Sometimes rash, a bit like Romero, but naturally he likes to defend and he's fast, he's quick. Presses from the front as well. So he's a player that, Poch could probably mould and look after, because Poch has got that in his DNA about developing players. Then you've got the issue of, are we going to be able to develop? Are we going to be able to, bring in the players that Poch wants? Because the issue was before we went a long time without bringing players in. When we did eventually bring the players in, the argument is, Ndombele, Lo Celso, Sessegnon, look how well they've done, or look how well they haven't done. But now you've got another cook in the kitchen in Paratici.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bigger spanner at work? Okay.
All right, apologies, guys. Our computer failed us not for the first time today, but here we are. We're back again. We were talking about Pochettino. Ashmatic was talking about Pochettino. But I don't want to, obviously, the technical difficulties have been really disrupting the stream. So we'll fire a few other managers and we'll call it a day. So Pochettino, we're pretty excited about. Let's go move on to Luis Enrique. He's another manager we mentioned, obviously highly successful at Barcelona. He was recently manager of the Spain team of the World Cup at the last Euros, where he got to the semi-final of the Euros and lost to Morocco in the World Cup. We'll go to Ash first. Luis Enrique, he's someone you like the look of?
Tottenham will ruin him, straight up. Tottenham will ruin him. I love Enrique. I love Enrique. I think his passing, that part. I think basically with Spain, they needed a Harry Kane. And because they never had a Harry Kane, they overcooked the passing. If they had like someone that was a little bit more vim up top, I think Spain would have got further, because I think they dominated Morocco, but Morocco just did the part of the bus and then they picked them off. And that's why Spain went out. But I think Spain was phenomenal in that tournament. Barcelona, obviously, he went from the 4-3-3 into a 3-4-3, and the Barcelona fans were happy with it. But he got the best out of Barcelona, even though people were saying, he had the, was it not SAS, the Suarez, MSN or whatever it was? Yeah. Basically, when you look at Roma, I think that was too early in his career for him to be judged on, because a lot of people are like, he was at Roma, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to kind of just swipe that across. I would love to see that start at Tottenham, where it's not the only way to play football, but I just kind of like my teams with possession, and I like the way he's adventurous with his passing. And when he did the 3-4-3, he's shown that his flexible capabilities, that he can bypass the midfield, he can go into the front three, he can play direct football as well if needed be. So he's not just like tiki-taka, he's got a bit more strings to his bow. And
think about players touches. Would that not just drive him nuts watching players touch?
Yeah, no. That's what I'm saying. That's why I wouldn't work at Tottenham. He would need back
a whole new squad.
He'd love Bentancur. He'd love
Garte would need to come in straight away, by the way. But yeah, he needs a lot more like players that can actually pass and first touch and were more adventurous with their passing and could take risks and were technically good as well to be able to keep ball and hold ball and make things work. And also the forward line needs to be versatile. So your wing forwards need to be able to come into out to in, etc. Your front three need to be able to rotate, and even the wing backs need to be super aggressive. And then you also need to be able to invert as well and become false wingers, inside wingers as well. Blah 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 blah. But Enrique, he's just basically a romance of mine that won't ever come true. It's a fantasy. That's the way I see it.
Sean, Enrique, would you want him at Tottenham? Would he be a success?
No, I agree with that. Everything Ashmatic said. I think I think the pivot in what we have to what we would need to make his style of football work is so dramatic that I don't think we're a club that's capable of making that sort of the decisions around getting rid of the deadwood, bearing in mind how difficult the European market is, right? It's an often unspoken reality that, you know, if you make mistakes in your transfer market, which Tottenham are, you know, incredibly consistent in doing, then you need to have a secondary market to offload your mistakes into. And because the vast majority of the European leagues are bankrupt, absent, you know, maybe half a dozen football clubs that seem to be able to figure it out, and most of them are a little bit sort of suspicious in how they can figure it out, how they can continue to compete. Then if you don't have a secondary market that you can offload, even if Daniel Levy was to change the habit of a lifetime and say, all right, I'll write down Ndombele to £5 million, or I'll write down this player, or I'll write down that player. These players are still signed on long-term contracts that are on Premier League wages, and they're never going to get that sort of money elsewhere in Europe. And so there's no obligation for those guys to give up, you know, their pay packet. And I don't blame them, because they've got a short life cycle in their own career, so that make as much money as they can, etc. But with that being the reality as it is, absent a European Super League, not that I'm invoking the need for it, but I think that, you know, you can't, it's not easy for us to get rid of the dross to make room for the new players coming in as the situation stands. And if you were to have a Luis Enrique, you would need, for me, an entirely new, that you'd have to get rid of not only most of the 8 players that are on loan, you'd have to get rid of about another 5 or 6 players, 7, 8 players from our current squad, and then rebuild again. And at Tottenham, the managers aren't given enough time to do it. So whilst Enrique would be an intriguing manager in a different environment, in a different circumstance, with where we are, what we have, and the environment around us in which we can operate in, Enrique's the wrong guy for the job.
You agree with that, Brains?
Yeah, pretty much. I just think he's a player who comes from a certain era of technical ability, and he wants that in his players. And I think he would have a heart attack. I think we'd watch him disintegrate, you know, on the sidelines. I think, he would we'd need too much work. He wouldn't be able to pick up where we are right now. Like bringing Enrique in right now and try to get top 4. I don't think he would know what to do with the quality of player we've got. So that's the always one.
Thomas Frank, obviously manager at Brentford right now, doing a fantastic job, being there for a few years, plays with a back three, plays a very kind of intense system. All the players work very hard and are all quite strong, and it's quite an intense like pressing system. Everyone does a lot of running, overperformed in each of his years at Brentford, currently in the top half of the table, creates a good culture around the club, also can work within a budget. So with you, Brains, Thomas Frank, would he be someone you consider?
I think that's someone going into a club that are eager to create a kind of a big winning, you know, mentality and stay, you know, and like, so they're like, their fans are happy because, you know, and there's this great vibe because they're like, they've got that kind of like us versus the world. We've come up, now we're staying. If we can stay around 10, woo, like, and this, everything's up and up. Bring him to Spurs. Let's see how quick we destroy that man's spirit. You know, like you don't have the network of everyone really fighting for something, togetherness between everyone. Like you have, you know, everyone's tired. There's a malaise at the club. Fans are outside with pitchforks wanting to kill everyone inside the building. You know, like it's not something I don't think that he would be used to. Football wise, I think it could work, but I don't know if I think maybe we should be looking at a Nagelsmann and a Poch and players who can play attractive football, but also be looking to, I don't know, just be looking higher and looking to win now. We want to kind of like the interesting thing with Poch is that you probably think there's a bit of fire in his belly, come in and do better. Nagelsmann probably want to come here and like, no, I'll be a young coach that wins the Prem. There's that fire in them, whereas like Frank, he'll come with kind of like, well, look, he's not going to come and like let me go for it. And fans at this club, right or wrong, we want to win titles, and so I don't think he's the guy to do that.
Ash, Thomas Frank, fan of his?
Thomas Frank, I'm a fan of what he's done at his club. I think Højbjerg would like him. Højbjerg would be like, yeah, bro.
Danish connection.
I just think that in terms of the Premiership, like, my only criticism of him is that sometimes he has lost leads and sometimes he's not able to see out games. And that's been a massive problem at Spurs of late, especially with the Southampton result that we just endured. So I would want a manager that's going to be able to have good in-game management. And I think that's something he needs to develop on his side. But in terms of likability, he's got the air about him. Whether the players, because we've got quite a few personalities in there now, whether they would respond to Thomas Frank in the way where we could push forward, that's debatable. Like, would Kane be happy with Thomas Frank, or would his chest be too high? That's another question mark I have. But yeah, definitely in styles of football, in terms of football, he is a very hard-working, front-footed manager. Very like direct as well. Like you said before, Reigns as well. A lot of running in the players, so a lot of players have to run for him, work for him. That 3-5-2 hasn't worked for us this season, even though we did try to deploy it and we haven't been as successful as the 3-4-3. But at least we have the three at the back and we can build up that. So Thomas Frank, for what he's done, if he could kind of produce that form into Spurs, then obviously that would propel Spurs into the top because of the job and the work he has done at Brentford. But I just feel like it's a different energy, like Brains was saying. It's a different expectation from the fan base because the fans have got a lot to do with it. I think if the fans were to lower their expectations and say, look, 6th, 7th, is a decent season, but we had still attacking and attractive football, we could live with that. Frank could work.
But we'd lose Kane, and then we'd be fighting relegation battles, and then we'd need a Thomas Frank just to keep us up every season.
Yeah, I think it's true. Without a Kane, I just feel like, but I mean, like as Sean always says, we need to prepare for life without Kane. But my thing is, everyone's saying sell him now. I would like to bring in 1 or 2 players to embed in, to like maybe like we keep Kane on the bench 1 or 2 games and slowly embed these players, slowly phase Kane out, and so you're saying the club straight away, and then all of a sudden we're not winning games because Kane's not there and we're not the same side. A bit like when we tried to do the Magnificent Seven with Bale, when we sold Bale and we tried to get all those players in at work, and then Tim Shaw would have to come in and then even then it didn't.
You're saying get Thomas Frank in and then buy Rasmus Højlund as Kane's understudy. That sounds.
I've heard of worse plans. But Sean, do you like Thomas Frank?
Yeah, I agree with what both the guys said. I think that he's good for where he's at, the level he's at. I think he's doing a really good job where he is. But I think that there's 2 consequences with Thomas Frank that are absolute certainties. One is Harry Kane leaves, and the other is that the fans will have absolutely no patience or tolerance with that rebuild because he is not an exciting name that people can get behind a rebuild for. So for me, no, it will be that's another one that's doomed to fail, and it shouldn't happen. Definitely not.
Ruben Amorim. Sean, you were talking about him before, saying that you like the look of him and he's quite similar to someone like Nagelsmann. The only difference is he would command a fee to get him. But in terms of the level of manager, do you highly rate him?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I really liked him. I'll be honest, I didn't realise, I looked into him over the last couple of days or last week or whatever. I didn't realise how successful he's been everywhere he's been, not just at Sporting, but in Braga before. He beat Benfica. Was it Benfica? He beat in the cup final with the Sporting Braga team. The guy's coming in. He's coming up. He's innovative. He's got the passion. He's got the mind, the hearts and minds of the players that he's played with or managed rather. I think I do think it's a relevant point that with the squad that you have, does the person coming in if they have a propensity to potentially have the 3-4-3 or the wing-back system as their preferred style, that have the ability to adapt when necessary, when the opportunity presents itself, rather than having a back four as the primary focus, and then if necessary pivot to a back three. I think he is a good option. I don't think there's very many similarities between him and Nagelsmann. The obvious difference being, I guess, the caliber, the level of the club that he's managed. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. The only problem that I foresee is the costs. And I know it's like, an irrelevant thing in the long run, but in the short term, it's massively relevant. If Tottenham need to go out and spend, look, you get 150 million quid transfer budget this summer, and you go and drop that on two big centre backs and a goalkeeper and a creative midfielder, then Tottenham's squad is, I think, good enough to compete. I really do. I think we don't need much more than those four big players. However, that's going to cost, to get those four big players, it's going to cost you 150 million quid. And Tottenham have made it clear unequivocally that money has to come from within the clubs, working within their means. And if you have to go and drop, allegedly it's 30 million euros now, and that cost goes down by 25% in the summer. So 22.5 million euros just to get Amorim in the summer, or 30 million now. If you also have to deal with Conte's contract, and that looks like an extra 20 million between him and his team, then that's, circa 50 million quid that is coming out of a transfer budget that is going to be impacted and influenced by how well we finish the season. If you finish fourth, then you're still taking out, that's still a massive slice of the pie. If you don't finish fourth, and at the moment it's probably unlikely, I think, with all the turmoil that's going on, if you finish fifth, you're in the Europa League, then you can knock 50 million off the transfer budget. If you finish 6th, 7th or 8th, then you can knock a lot more. So for me, whilst I'm very intrigued by Amorim, I've got absolutely no issues with his tactics. I was so impressed with the way that he set up against Arsenal. It was phenomenal to see a Sporting team absolutely dominate away from home the team in Arsenal that has been spoken about and touted as being, if not the best, then the second best football playing side in Europe this season, behind Napoli or Benfica, depending on what you like. But he absolutely tore them apart with a high press, high intensity 3-4-3 system. I've got no problems with Amorim as a manager. I'd be very intrigued about him. I just think the cost of getting it done, and where we're going to finish in the league, and how we find our money to pay for what we need for next season anyway, I think all of those things kind of eventuate in a situation where he's probably not the most obvious choice. But I'm happy if Daniel Levy can find a way to make it happen, and it doesn't disrupt our ability to go and find two decent centre backs and a goalkeeper and a creative midfielder. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, Ash or Brains, do you guys know a lot about Amorim?
For me, everyone's talking about how well he is attacking, but he's impressed me defensively as well. The back five that he can also implement as well in certain game situations can help Spurs stability-wise. He does a back five at times with two covering as well. They sit in the two sit-in, and then the three up top. Sometimes what happens is the other two might sit in as well and help, and they kind of create a box. So centrally, a bit like Conte, you find it hard to break you down centrally. And then when it comes wide as well, he's got enough players to create overloads in certain areas where he presses, and we make a numerical advantage and win the ball back up, higher up the pitch as well. So it's not even just like a low block. Sometimes it's a mid block or we're pressing high, and we're able to make numerical advantages where we turn over the ball, we make those transitions, and we win the ball high up. And that's what Spurs have been missing certain times tactically, as pressing as a unit. And if he can implement that into some of the boys, then I think that would be also be advantageous for Tottenham. I'm very aware of what Sean's saying about the financial implications of bringing them in. But I mean, if we were limited to two players that we had to bring in, I know everyone's been screaming for a creative mid, but I'll be happy to just have one centre back, one top centre back, to partner, maybe like your Romero, and then maybe get one of our younger centre backs kind of develop them into a top player, because he's good at developing players, a bit like Nagelsmann.
Yeah, very
He's
good.
really good at developing players.
Very
So
good.
if he can find one of our youth players, give them experience, you know, even if we sometimes shit the bed, you know, excuse my language, but if we can somehow kind of push through that, then I'll be happy just to have one centre back and then a goalkeeper, because I feel like those were the two areas that really let us down. Those were where the mistakes were. That's what's cost us for our position in the league table. That's what's made it hard for us. That's what's ultimately made Conte lose his marbles, and
100%.
why he probably like said what he said in the press conference, because of things like that. And you always come back to that old saying that Fergie was always saying: you can only win, you can win the league with a back four, and you win games with attacking players. So we build from the back, essentially. Even like when it comes to attacks, it's just players being comfortable enough and brave enough at the back line to start those attacking transitions. So if we get a player that's quick enough, mobile enough, we can do that high press. We can adopt more attacking styles of play, and fans will be behind it, even if we don't win titles or cups straight away. Or as long as the attacking football's there, fans can get behind that. And I think the reason why fans turned so much was because there was a lack of attacking football at times, and games were very boring. And if you're not going to win stuff, and you're not going to be winning the games, because if you look at it, it was our best start as a team, as Tottenham Hotspur, in a long while. We had one of our best starts in the Premier League.
Best start ever after 10 games, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, most boring start ever.
Yeah. Best start ever, but no one watched it because everyone was asleep in the stands.
But this is it. So imagine that. We've got some of our highest points tallies, and yeah, look at the talking points. Look how unhappy we are. So I always look back at what's his name, Juan Ramos. Juan Ramos brought us our trophy. But who cares? Because the football was so awful. Do you understand? Nobody ever talks about. Whereas Pochettino, he didn't win anything, but we can't stop talking about him. Do you know what I mean? Because of the style of
Harry
football.
Redknapp. Our three most memorable managers: Redknapp, Joel, and Pochettino, didn't win anything.
I love mine.
But
yeah, you're right.
Brought us enjoyment, right? Which is
if anyone disagrees with me, if I'm talking out my arse, I'm happy. I don't mind. This is just my opinion, for me, that this appeases a lot of the fans, and you won't get so much toxicity. And that's how the manager stays in for a job for longer. You can develop players for much longer time, and that unity starts to form. And that's what you need. You need unity. You need rhythm. You need a togetherness in the squad to push up the table. And we had that at Spurs. We had that under Poch. You had that under Redknapp and other managers. So if we can kind of replicate that, we can start to, and you said that we will agree that we're not too many players off of it. So if this summer we were just able to get two key areas fixed, then yeah, I think it could work.
All right, Brains, do you know much about Amorim? Was he one who you would like through the door?
Nah.
All right then.
Nah, like, he's a good manager. He's I love what he did with with Spurs and Braga, but yeah, it's a different world. It is a different world coming from the Portuguese league to walking through those doors, and trying to take on Spurs. It's just a different world. It would break him as well. And he's young, but I don't think that keeps Kane. I don't think that really revitalizes the dressing room. I don't think he would get the type of players in that he probably wants as well. So yeah, I can't really see him working that much. I don't think the fans would be that much into him,
All right. A couple of quick fire managers now before we end the show. So just a couple of words on these managers, and we'll end it. We'll start with Sean. Vincent Kompany.
Listen, don't know enough about his what he's done in his managerial time. I haven't really researched him, but I did take a look at your that little graph thing that you put out yesterday, mate. And if he plays defensive, pragmatic football, then absolutely not. I don't have no interest in it. I want to see good football, so no for me.
Ash, Vincent Kompany, you like the look of him?
every child underneath Pep has proven why they are the best at the moment. You've got Arteta top. You've got obviously him company at top of the championship, playing some of the best football they've seen, and you've got the Celtic manager as well. Celtic manager doing similar
Doing
things
bits.
as well. Yeah, doing bits, top of the league as well. So that is a reason for us to look at him under this particular board and the fans that we have and the time. Probably not.
Brains, Vincent Company.
Yeah, I watched like the show that he did when he went to Anderlecht, and I don't know. It was just, I think people have seen some clips from that and been like, oh wow, like, but actually, if you watched all of it, it was a lot of turmoil. I think he really struggled at times. Like it was, I don't really think he should have had a camera on him during that process. He was very like crazy in the dressing room and stuff. And but yeah, I didn't really see much. It was very up and down with them, and he's doing well with Burnley, but I don't think that. I don't know. I'd rather see him bring Burnley into the Prem and then see how he does for a season with Burnley. So I would say no with them just now.
Brains, stick with you, Marco Silva.
Nah, straight up no. Like I don't really see anything that of why, you know, like it's a different thing when you take on a club whose ambitions are lower and then you kind of do all right with them, because like you're not dealing with the same style of players who have that kind of, all the players in a Fulham team or all the players in the teams that he's worked with, like they don't have that, like we should be winning, and the fans, 60,000 fans every week looking down going, you should be winning titles, you know, like
yeah. No pressure. It's no pressure job, isn't it? Kind of
yeah.
thing.
So I don't think he's got the plums to handle Spurs right now.
Sean, Marco Silva, you like fan of his?
I am a fan of his, mate. Listen, I think he's super intelligent. When I listen to him do post or pre-match press conferences, or even just out on the pitch and stuff, like the guy speaks absolute like logic and intelligence. Like he's very interesting. I do think he will become a top manager, or at least he could become a top manager. I do think he's got the stones potentially, but I agree with Brains. At Fulham, it's a very low pressure environment, and for him to supersede expectations there is a different environment than walking into a pressure cooker, which Tottenham should be, but also especially now will be even more than ever before. So a lot of like for the guy, a lot of admiration for him. I hope he does really well, and I want to continue to track his progress, but I don't think he is the right guy for the job at this stage.
Ash, Marco Silva?
Yeah, not for me, but he started off well, but it was a fall off. I think it's the fall off that's kind of put me off, to be fair. And I feel like since they've lost the Paulina, the destroyer in the midfield, I feel like they've just kind of, their results have kind of capitulated a little bit. They're really missing that presence in midfield, that ball-winning midfielder. I wouldn't mind him at Spurs actually, Paulina. But
Yeah, he'd be awesome at Spurs. I wouldn't mind him as well.
Yeah, I think he's a great asset, and that's my opinion.
Fair enough. Any other managers that you reckon we could do well that haven't been mentioned? You reckon might actually be able to come into Spurs? Anyone refer any managers out there who we think we haven't discussed?
Potter would do that. I don't think Potter would do that bad. De Zerbi,
Potter, De Zerbi. What's it called? Brendan Rodgers? No? Is that a laugh out the room?
No, I'm not going to laugh it out of the room. I don't know. Like, obviously, he's fallen from grace at Leicester, but I think that's a consequence of being there so long. We're speaking about tactics going stale with Conte within 18 months. I think with Pochettino, I think a lot, you see it with Klopp a little bit. I'm not blaming Klopp for necessarily what's happening with Liverpool, but I think it's more to do with them not fixing the midfield issues. But ultimately, unless you're someone that's constantly innovating yourself, and then every day or every year or whatever, you're bringing new systems with your team, and everyone's behind it. Let's try something new. Let's experiment. Essentially, like if you're going into, as a manager, going into your team every day in any walk of life, if you're saying the same thing for a year, for 6 months, for a year, whatever, it can be interesting to hear it. 4 or 5 years later, if you're still seeing the same thing, hearing the same thing, then it grows a little bit tiresome. And I think that Brendan Rodgers is someone that has been at Leicester for maybe a little bit too long. It doesn't mean that he's a bad manager. I don't necessarily think he's nowhere near my first top 3 for Tottenham, but I think wherever he goes next, he will do a very good job.
All right, well, guys, appreciate your time. I understand that all the technical difficulties has led to an extended panel show, but I've enjoyed the discussion. I think it's been a great chat. Appreciate. I will leave you with this to get you all excited before we end the show, though. Matt Law of the Telegraph is now reporting Tottenham are set to seek talks with Julian Nagelsmann following his sacking from Bayern Munich, and he is the Telegraph can reveal that Nagelsmann has an affinity to Tottenham after he was a big fan of their team under Pochettino, so he really likes Tottenham Hotspur. So Tottenham apparently he's a tier 1 source set to seek talks with Julian Nagelsmann. So maybe that last half an hour chat about managers is a bit irrelevant now, but we'll have to wait and see. But look, guys, well, watch out for the Tottenham update because I will be reporting on all the news surrounding Nagelsmann on our new manager search. But Brains, Sean, Ash, thank you so much for joining me and giving up your time and talking about Spurs. I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
And Sai,
big up to you guys, and
Sai
Sai for his very, very brief cameo. Appreciate all you guys. Appreciate all the guys in the chat, all the super chats. I guess I'll read. I haven't actually got to the super chats. Wasn't able to get them. I'll read out a few before we end the show. One from Herman Demicoli. Actually didn't have a message in there. I can't see the other ones now. I've lost them. Apologies for all the super chats that weren't read out. If you do, I will send them again. If I will read them out next time, I'm really, really sorry about that. But thank you, everyone, for all the chats, all the views. Thank you, all the contributors for the show. Also, if you want to plug your shows, Sean, Spurs Talk Show, go check him out on YouTube. Does great Spurs content. Ash or Brains, you want to plug anything? Feel free.
Check me out on Brains. I get down with your mom every other week.
I regret saying that. Do not.
No, it's me.
No one check out Brains. Don't go to. Just avoid him like the plague. There, right, Ash, big up to you guys. Thank you for joining us for a great panel show. The clips will be out a bit later, and there will be a Tottenham update. But big up to all you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.